During our previous video discussions, we already introduced to you the first, second, and third characteristic of quantitative research. So the first characteristic of quantitative research is that quantitative research is objective. The second one is that it uses clearly defined research questions. And third one is that it makes use of structured research instruments to gather data. So we are down to the fourth characteristic of quantitative research. So to discuss this one, let us have this illustration or example. So suppose a certain educational assessment was done in order to test if the students learned well during a certain lesson. Then, the following frequencies and cumulative scores were tabulated. So, let us reiterate that once more. Suppose a certain educational assessment, so let's say an exam or a quiz, a certain educational assessment, okay, was done or was, let's say, executed so that in order to test if the students learned well. So to test if the students, okay, learned well. Okay? So with that, let's say research design, or let's say with that kind of problem, the following frequencies and scores were tabulated. So F would determine our frequencies and X would determine our cumulative scores. So let's say we have a score of 42.5, then a score of 38.5, then we have a score of 34.5, then score of 30.5, 26.5, and 22.5. Now, let's say 3 students got a score of 42.5. 5 students got a score of 38.5. 7 students got a score of 34.5. 8 students got a score of 30.5. 6 students got a score of 26.5. And another 6 students got a score of 22.5. Now, with this data presented, okay, as in our frequency table, so let's say we have rows and columns so that it will be called a frequency table. Now, with this data presented with the frequency table, the researchers depicted its demographic equivalent using a frequency polygon. So whenever we say there is a demographic equivalent, okay, demographic equivalent, we try to arrange this data in a form of graphs, okay, tables, okay, or charts. So the demographic equivalent. So let's say the researchers used a demographic equivalent known as the frequency polygon. Frequency polygon. Okay. So this will be tackled in your, let's say, research 3 or research 4. Okay. So let us have the x and y axis. Okay. So we have the x and y axis. So in the x axis, we plot our scores, cumulative scores. So starting from 22.5. So 22.5, we have 26.5, we have 30.5, say we have 34.5, 38.5, then we have 42.5, and then let's say we have another equivalent of 46.5. Okay, then in our y-axis, we plot the frequencies. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So let's say let's have another one here, 8. Okay, now let us try to plot these or the points, okay, of this table. So the frequency is 3 and the score is 42.5. So we will have it here. Okay, then 38.5 and 5. So we will have it here. Say here. Then we have 7 and 34.5. So let us have it here. Then 8, 30.5. We have 26.5 and 6. So 6.5 and 6. Then 22.5 and 6. Okay. Now with this graph, let us try to connect all these dots. Okay. So as you can see, we started from 0, then we jumped to 22.5. So we add here some line like that. Okay, and from here we connect the dots. Okay, and it will end in this next value. So this one is actually the frequency polygon, or the demographic equivalent of this frequency table. So with the data presented, or with this example presented, what is the fourth characteristic of quantitative research? So let us have the discussion. So remember that quantitative research make use of quantities from its root word quantity. Meaning to say, it makes use of quantity or numbers. And we can say that in our illustration, we use different values or numbers. So the data are in numerical form. Then, another thing, using the frequency table here with the cumulative scores, we can say that the data undergone statistical analysis. Okay, statistical analysis. So meaning to say, the data is in the form of statistics. And this data in the form of statistics and numerical values is actually represented by this demographic equivalent. And this demographic equivalent can be, let's say, represented through the following. Using graphs, tables, charts. We also have figures. Okay? Or other, let's say, other organizational figures that is non-textual in form. Okay? Non-textual form demographs. So meaning to say, okay, or needless to say, the fourth characteristic of quantitative research, okay, is that quantitative research makes use of, so to make it short, it makes use of numerical data. Okay, it makes use of numerical data, in which this numerical data, okay, or the data of quantitative research is in the form of numbers. So in numerical or statistical form of data. Okay? So what do we mean by this fourth characteristic once more? Quantitative research makes use of numerical data. Okay? And this numerical data is in number form or statistical form. Now, this statistical form or numerical form of data is arranged or represented through different demographic equivalent. And this different demographic equivalent can be in the form of graphs, tables, charts, figures, and other non-textual form of demographs. Okay? So the data in quantitative research is in the form of numbers, subjected to statistical treatments in order to be interpreted and generate conclusions. So that is the fourth characteristic of quantitative research.